Welcome back to the natural area. Let's go on another explore. Today we're going to explore Camas. I pointed it out a little bit, but today we're really going to look at Camas and talk about Camas a little bit. So why Camas? Well, first of all, this is the time. A few weeks ago, wouldn't have been able to find it. In a few more weeks, probably wouldn't be able to find it again. This is the time when the camas are blooming. This is an important time for camas, and it was an important, super important time for the native Kalapuya people that lived here. All right, so this is kind of where I showed you some before, but if we take a look now, we can see there's a lot more of it. We saw one or two last week, but now there's becoming more and more. In fact, as we walk along, I'm going to zoom this back in a little bit. I'm going to take us on a little walk around because there's actually quite a bit more that has come up, and I'm always surprised because I thought I knew where most of the camas was, but now when I come out here, what was that? A little bird. It is popping up all over the place. So for example, this is this little area over here by the bird bird nest box. And look, there's one right there. And here's another one right here. They're popping up all over the place. And pretty much anywhere you go that's open and grassy, you'll find some camas. Now there's a few more down here. We're going to come back. And there's some over in the meadows by the aspen. And here's a little bunch of them right here. So they're popping up. So we planted these, not these exact ones, but we did plantings over the years. And what happens is they make seeds, and the seeds spread around, and voila, we have more camas. So it is starting to spread around the wetlands and the meadow areas, which is exactly what we want. We are making this the land of Mountain View. We're helping it return to the way it was when the Kalapuya were here, the native people of the Willamette Valley. So we have quite a bit more. Check it out. They're beautiful. Here's one just starting to open up. Now I've got a spot that I've kind of got set up, and I've got my little drawing paper. So if you want to pause this now, you might go see if you can find your journal or a piece of paper to draw on, because I always like to do some kind of a record or a sketch of something for what I've seen or learned out in the natural area. So today let's see. Here's mine. I've started. There's something that we're gonna take a look at today. Got to have the date so I know when I come back. Today, when you see this, it will be the 10th. And I always note a little bit about the weather. Kind of overcast today. It's not horrible like rain overcast, but there's a good layer of clouds up there. And it's not cold, it's not hot, kind of in between, more on the cool side, but it's definitely overcast. So I noted that down. I made a little picture of the clouds. The sun's kind of hiding behind them. It sticks out once in a while. And it's about 60 degrees, which is that kind of just right, a little cooler than what it's like in your house. All right, now I'm going to be drawing. So have your spot where you can do some drawing. So let's take a look at this plant. There's a lot of it in this spot of the pond, a big pond, that happens to be an area that we used to walk along a lot because the path was covered in blackberry. So we would walk along here, and over time, when you walk in the same spot, things get a little bit compacted, and there are less of the grasses here than there are out in the middle of the pond. So I'm thinking that we made it a little harder for grasses to grow, which means we made it a little easier for the camas to grow. There's some right over there and over there. And that's one of the ways that people and plants work together. If a plant's important to you, like it was important to the Kalapuya, it makes sense to kind of work in partnership with it. The Kalapuya helped the Camas out by burning the fields at the end of the year. They would get rid of a lot of that excess grass. Sometimes they'd burn in the spring, but if you keep the other vegetation down, you make it easier for the plants to grow. So they help the plants by using fire. All right, let's look closely at it too. It looks like grass, doesn't it? It looks a lot like grass. It's got kind of these long grass-like, but they're a little bit wider than grass, and they all come out from the center at the bottom. And the leaves come out, and then the plant sends up this spike in the middle, and that's where the flowers are. Now you can see at the very top, the flowers are kind of closed, and then the ones in the middle, actually this down here is a flower that's already bloomed and is now kind of drying up. And hopefully it's going to grow into a little pouch holding seeds. If you look super close at the flower, you can see little stemish things with light yellow-brown tips. And those are stamen. And then the center, that bright yellow at the center, is the stigma. And that's where you've got pollen that fertilizes, pollinates, and so then it can make seeds. So the whole job of the flower is to make seeds. Now, why would we care about identifying things? I mean, I could just say, oh yeah, that blue flower out there. Well, there are blue flowers that would not be good. If I were a Kalapuya Indian, I would not want to eat because they're not healthy. I need to know whether I'm looking at camas or at bluebells. Bluebells would not be good to eat. This camas, though, is an important food for me. But there's another kind of camas that would not be good. A white one. There's a relative that has white flowers that's called death camas. So it's important to look closely and understand and know all of you would call them characteristics, the things that we can see that tell us what kind of plant it is. So what we can see is this kind of flat grass-like leaf. We can see the stalk and the flowers. So take a look at it. There are 6 petals, and each petal has one of those little stamen on it, and there's the yellow center. So those are important things to know so that you know that you've got what you call a plant that has this group of flowers at the top. You call this group an inflorescence. It's a group of flowers. All right, so we've got this plant. We know it's a camas. So how did the Kalapuya use this plant? Well, it's actually part of their life, they call it lifeways, and they also call it seasonal rounds. So in the winter, they have a permanent camp, their main house. They would go on little trips to go trade, like up on the Columbia River, but they had their permanent main village. When it gets to be spring, they would pack up, just like if you were going to go camping, and they would pack up all the supplies that they need to hang out for or live for a couple weeks to a month or more out in the camas fields. And so they all would head out to the camas fields, and that would be their spring camp. And spring camp is all about gathering camas. Now what you want to gather is down below the ground. So they would bring pointed sticks, pointed wooden sticks, and they would get down here and they would dig down into the ground, and it's really quite deep. I had to dig pretty deep to find this one. They would dig up these. These are bulbs. And so they go around, and when you think about it, why would they want to come in spring? Well, in spring you can see all those blue flowers. You know where the camas bulbs are because the blue flowers tell you so. They say, whoop, 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 I am where a camas bulb is. So you go and you dig these up, and then you got to do some things to it to make it really good. So what you would do, sometimes you would dry it, but most often they would put it in, they would dig an oven underground. They would lay grass on the bottom, then you put the camas bulbs and hot rocks, so super, super hot rocks, and then you let it just kind of bake for a whole day. And after a whole day, the starches and things on the inside start breaking down because of that cooking, and they become sweet. In some ways, well, and people could use that as a sweetener to make other things sweet. So it'd be kind of like their sugar, their sweetener. In fact, it was so important and so valuable. That's what was one of the most important things to trade with other people. You would go up to the Columbia River and trade it for things you need. Or I was reading that sometimes if you had a marriage or a funeral, people would come and trade things or give gifts, and you would give bags of camas because camas was super important and valuable. So you cook it in the pit, you bring it out, you can grind it up into things. It was important for eating, it was important for trading, it was super important to the indigenous people. In fact, today, the Kalapuya and many of the tribes of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, they're actively out in Oregon, across the Willamette Valley, restoring fields of camas. So what we're doing here, trying to restore our camas fields, is to help in that same process. We're restoring the land to the way it was when the Kalapuya were here, which is pretty cool. And it's almost like, well, the Kalapuya were forced to go over to reservations on the other side of the Coast Range, and they were forced to leave this area when the settlers first came on the Oregon Trail. Those settlers, they didn't care about camas. They didn't realize how valuable it was. They wanted crops. They wanted to grow wheat, and so they started planting crops, and the camas disappeared. So when the Kalapuya disappeared, the camas disappeared. Well, in a way, bringing back the camas is a way to remember the Kalapuya people, because they didn't disappear, just like the camas didn't completely disappear. They've been here, and they're working to restore the land to a healthy natural state, and like it was back when it was their land. And it was their land for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And they learned how to take care of the camas and take care of the land over thousands of years. They call it time immemorial. Okay, so that's a little bit about camas. You can probably see it in a lot of parts of the Willamette Valley in Oregon if you're out in the meadows. So keep an eye out for these blue stars in amongst the grass. All right, thank you for coming with me. There are some other videos and some other information that I'm going to send out so you can learn a little bit more about camas and the Kalapuya. Have fun.